Okay, I've got to be real with you, today's story's a little wild, so here's something that's odd about Monster Hunter Wilds. If you check Steam right now, or at least when we wrote this, you'll see about 70,000 reviews. 68% are positive, so a mixed reception, which isn't great for Monster Hunter. But what if I told you that actually is not the real score? It really isn't, because the real score is 50% positive from 167,000 reviews. What's literally happening is Steam, by default, is hiding nearly 100,000 reviews from you, and those are reviews warning about performance problems that Capcom still hasn't fixed months after launch. Now you might be wondering, why can't I see these reviews? It's fairly simple. It's because they're not in English. You see, Steam quietly changed how review scores work, and now, by default, you only see reviews in your own language. So, Japanese reviews of a Japanese franchise, those will be hidden, unless you dig into the settings that most people will never touch. Another example is Stalker 2. It's missing 40,000 positive Eastern European reviews. Brazilian indies look 3 times smaller than they are now, and that's actually going to be bad for their sales. And then the small elephant in the room, China. That's because Chinese users now make up 33% of Steam. Sometimes, actually, that's more than English speakers. And whenever they don't like something, they can tank a game's score overnight. So, in a way, by doing this with review scores, Valve kind of just built their own great firewall. But it's not really to keep them out, it's to keep you from seeing what they think. And it obviously isn't just Chinese reviews, it impacts, well, literally everything. And taking Stalker as an example, you know what? I would love to know what Eastern European gamers think of that game. That's relevant to me. And as with most things that get hidden behind a setting, well, come on, it's the default effect. You know that setting this to be the default is going to impact a lot of people in a way they will never know.
I've also got big news for the thousands of you who have visited and used our sponsor, Boot.dev, and that news is TypeScript. If you know what that means, you know it's pretty huge. The entire backend learning path is now playable in TypeScript as well as Go. It's funny, Lane, the founder's tweet, basically just reads, "Fine, you win, we've capitulated to the way of soy because enums." And if you're wondering why you should care, well, TypeScript is Microsoft's vastly more powerful JavaScript, static types, fearless refactors, editor autocompletion, lots of lovely things, which is why Google, Slack, and Airbnb use it in production. It lets you catch bugs while you're coding instead of, when the server's on fire. TypeScript's awesome. Now, Boot.dev wraps all of that in the power of an RPG. That means quests, XP, boss fights, real-time leaderboards, community, all of that. You get to enjoy that while you're wiring up databases, building REST APIs, deploying to the cloud, and now doing all that with TypeScript. And by the time you finish your learning path, you will have a portfolio full of back-end projects. You'll have the confidence to dual-wield TypeScript and Go in any gig, which is going to be huge for employers. And there's a bit of a hack to save you the most money. Boot.dev/Bellular News, code Bellular News gets you 25% off with your first purchase. But what you can do is buy the yearly plan for the largest saving, because, 25% of a bigger number is a bigger number. And if you don't gel with it, well, just use the no-risk 30-day money-back guarantee.
Okay, so here's what's changed. Yes, Steam now defaults to showing you review scores from your language only. Now, the threshold is at least 2,000 total reviews with at least 200 in your language. Above that, well, welcome to the bubble. Below that, well, you won't be impacted, so that's going to be pretty good, I would say, for small indies, where everything will just stay global. Now, where this gets impactful is the big review score at the top of every Steam page, because it now says mixed. But what it actually means is mixed according to English speakers only. Same obviously goes for the other review scores. Now, to be fair, you can change this. There's a setting that is buried in preferences under review score settings, and once you change that, it will stay that way. And I probably recommend you do change it. Now, there's also a C language breakdown link on every product page that will show you all of the numbers. Let's be honest with ourselves here. When is the last time you clicked a breakdown link or dove into the Steam review settings? That's just not something that people normally do, and that might be what Valve are counting on. Their official line is this: customers in different regions have vastly different experiences. Now, this can refer to translation issues, cultural references, network problems, and they say that language-specific scores are more, quote, relevant. And sometimes that's absolutely true, but if you find yourself hiding Japanese reviews from Monster Hunter, or say Ukrainian reviews from Stalker 2, that's not really helpful. That's kind of just segregating the reviews in a way that I don't think is useful. And the kicker here is that Valve already solved review bombing in 2019 with a completely different approach. And, well, you'll see how this can be relevant to review bombing shortly. But when they did that, they basically showed graphs of review activity, and they marked suspicious patterns. And everything was kept visible, but you got context. And this was pretty good. It was transparency. But what's different is that this now impacts game curation, and they're not even being upfront about it. Okay, let me show you how distorted this makes reality. Take Monster Hunter Wilds, where you see 70,000 English reviews at 68%. The reality is 167,000 at 50%. Now, those hidden reviews do of course include Japanese ones, which are Japanese players warning about the game-breaking performance issues that, well, just haven't been fixed. For another game, there is Wuchang Fallen Feathers. English sees 4,100 reviews at 69%. In reality, it's got 38,000 reviews at 50%. Now, this game has had massive technical problems, and then, well, there's the big thing. Patch 1.5 censored the story of the game after pressure. Let's just say it's all very sus looking and quite bad. Western users, though, who are browsing Steam, will have no idea of that, because the reviews expressing it, funnily enough, are in Chinese. For another example, there's Tale of Immortal. It's Chinese hit with 193,000 reviews, but English speakers only see 3,500 reviews, which makes the game look tiny. Makes the game look 50 times smaller than it is. There's another one, Astria Six-Sided Oracles. It's a Brazilian deck builder, and it shows 999 reviews to English users, but in reality, it's got over 3,000 reviews. And at $24, I think that difference between small indie and established hit kind of matters. If you're casually browsing Steam and you see 900 reviews versus seeing 3,500 reviews, you will think that the 3,500 is more statistically significant and therefore more reliable, and that could change your purchase decision, which, for this Brazilian indie, would probably matter for their bottom line. And obviously, Stalker 2, which is missing 40,000 positive reviews from Ukrainian, Russian, German, and Polish players, who will be the players who will care the most about that game. And here, they're invisible. But there's another example, and it's with Peak. English users see 56,000 reviews at 94%. Now, Chinese players rate that at 73%. So there's clearly something in that game that's not translating. Shouldn't you know that before you buy it? And as I mentioned, review count doesn't tell you everything, but it is kind of important. 50,000 reviews at 80% looks more trustworthy than 5,000 reviews at 85%. So by hiding reviews, Steam is hiding opinions, and more importantly, they're hiding the scale of social proof behind a game's review score, and that will impact sales, that will impact developers. So why is this happening now? Well, it's May 2024, Helldivers 2 is a thing, and Sony has just demanded PlayStation account linking for those fun days. Now, when this happened, the game got review bombed into oblivion, but there was a crucial detail. The Chinese community went nuclear, because PlayStation does not exist in huge parts of Asia, so they just got completely screwed over, which is super unfair. They were locked out of the game entirely, and within 72 hours, overwhelmingly positive fell to mixed. But Chinese reviews? Well, they ended up being just 27% within a single day, because obviously they were pissed that they would no longer be able to play the game that they bought. Now, Sony completely reversed course here. Steam did issue refunds regardless of playtime, and the review bomb did end up winning, which, does kind of show the players do have a degree of power here. But what that did is it scared Valve. Take a look at this GDC 2025 chart, where we see that Chinese users are 33.7% of Steam, while English is 33.5%. So the two are neck and neck. A third of Steam users exist in a completely different cultural context, and in this case with Helldivers, they could tank a Western game. overnight. But there is a fascinating angle to this, where Asian reviews consistently run 10 to 20% more negative than Western ones. And obviously, there is loads of diversity within that broad banner. As an example, if you take food review culture on TripAdvisor of say UK versus Japan, they are totally different. A lot of review standards, say between Japan and China, they end up being quite a little bit different. But it is broadly true that Asian reviews are consistently running 10 to 20% more negative than Western ones. Why? Well, it could be different expectations, stricter standards, but it doesn't really matter in a way. What matters is that Valve saw a future where any old Western game could get torpedoed by foreign reviewers who were not that game's target audience. So instead of their usual solution, which would be to give potential customers tools and transparency, Valve kind of just chose to make walls, which I don't like, because that's not really the Valve that I know. What this means then is we are shopping in parallel Steam stores that barely intersect. Western developers can ignore Asian server problems because those complaints will be invisible to, say, their English target audience. Bad translations don't affect English scores. Regional performance issues stay hidden, and this can just create echo chambers where, say, English users see one reality, Chinese see another reality, and we're no longer shopping on the same store. And small non-English developers are kind of fucked. I brought up a Brazilian indie game for an example. Now, their games, after these changes, will look tiny to Western audiences, and less reviews will mean less credibility. In the worst case, it could mean less algorithmic visibility. I've got to assume that filtering this stuff doesn't impact the algorithm on a first order basis, but I'd say there could be second order effects that would impact the algorithm that obviously would be based on there being less clearly visible social proof as reflected in the quantity of reviews. So as an example, that Brazilian indie that went viral in Latin America looks dead to English speakers. Meanwhile, Chinese players, a third of Steam, have been shadow banned from influencing Western bits of the store. And it's kind of weird because for 20 years, Steam's philosophy was mostly one of radical transparency, right? When review bombing became a problem, they just gave you more info. They gave you graphs, context, tools to help you decide. Whereas something like this does feel like it's Valve saying, we know better than you. You're not going to see those things because we've already made that decision for you. And that is kind of Steam treating you like a child who needs protection from confusing foreign opinions, which seems daft to me. And the precedent is really not that good. If Valve can do this with reviews, what next? Will we get region-locked forums, curated store pages, player counts being filtered by locality? Weird stuff. And I think there's a real fundamental thing here. Filtering reality is probably not good. I don't know about you, but this is simply not the Valve that I recognize. The Valve I know would fight censorship by exposing it, by giving you transparency, by giving you tools, by trusting you with difficult information and tools. This is a Valve that's making choices for you and hiding information. A Valve that is deciding what is relevant for you. Now, could this increase sales? I mean, maybe. It could make some Western games look better to Western audiences because of the review negativity difference between markets. Maybe that would mean more sales. It could certainly make purchase decisions easier because there's less info to contend with, and that would make Valve more money. But we are just watching on, seeing Steam slowly, in some small little strange ways, become what it kind of stood against. This does not feel like Valve to me. I don't like it. I don't like a platform shaping my reality without telling me, which, let's be real, most of them do kind of do, right? And look, most players won't notice. They will see filtered scores, not know they're filtered, they'll buy games, they'll never realize that they are shopping in a weird Valve-filtered curated bubble. The reviews technically are there. Valve can absolutely say they are not censoring, they're just making those reviews invisible by default. But in doing that, Steam goes from neutral platform to active curator, from neutral ground to actually just doing filtering. And I think if we don't push back, if we don't demand that this is a toggle that's front and center, then I think this is just the beginning. If they want to do this by default, make it very clear that's what's going on. Make there be a little toggle or something under the review score so someone can immediately see if there's anything different, so that people are armed with tools and information. I can understand why Valve would want to do this, but this makes me trust them less. This makes me trust Steam less. And I think, as Valve very much know, trust matters on things like this. I want to know what you think, but of course, the news does not end there. And if you want another spicy slice of it, you gotta check out this video next.